Welcome back to another Just 15 Mins, or Just 15 Minutes. I'm not quite sure I'm going to work that one. Um, anyway, what we're going to talk about this time around. And firstly, a bit of an apology in the last video. I went into AI agents and agentic systems, and it was a real ramble fest, that one. And way over, in fact, double the just 15 minutes that I'm trying to stick to. I will return to that because I do believe there's a lot of hype, yes, and I'm picking up a little bit of that as well, of course. But there's also, I see from a business perspective, there's some real advantages there, and also in the realm of integration processes. So not just a pretty little web bot that can be a bit like a chat GPT on your website, but a little bit more than that. So I'm going to delve into that, and loosely sort of coupled, there's two sectors that I'm going to focus on. One's more of a low code approach and some of the pros and cons of that, and the other one is, where there's more code but there's more control, and a lot of the things I'm going to show are actually open source as well. So anyway, but we'll try to make those videos a little bit more specific and a bit more concise, if I can ever eventually get to that. I was going to say that's my goal anyway. But today, infrastructure as code. What the heck is that all about? Well, ultimately, if you're deploying whatever it is, Dave's dodgy website, and I don't mean dodgy in any other way, by the way, just dodgy because it's crap, really. But anyway, Dodgy Dave's super website. Now, if it's just that, you just FTP it, copy it up to a website wherever you're going to host your website, and job done. That doesn't scale very well when you're building proper software, which thankfully nobody lets me do anymore, and for a good reason. But anyway, the idea is if you're deploying a system that's got multiple components, like you might have a VM that's running an application, or a Kubernetes cluster, or a Docker container infrastructure. You may have multiple containers, you may have, then you've got a database server, you might have a queuing mechanism and all that. Anyway, you've got all the usual things. And if you're working with any sort of CI/CD systems, the continuous integration, continuous development pipelines, things like GitHub Actions, or any of the multitude of those types of CI/CD pipelines out there, then you really need repeatable sort of ways of getting that infrastructure either onto a test environment, or obviously to your production setup. And of course, you can do that imperatively, where you've just got scripts that get run. And if it's really fairly straightforward sort of stuff, then maybe you can stick to that. But then you start to think, okay, you want that version controlled. You can still version control scripts, of course, but you need something a bit more repeatable and a bit more maintainable for scale, should you go that way. And that's where declarative infrastructure as code comes in. Okay, so the idea is it's almost an abstract level above what in this case, some of the cloud providers, and it doesn't really matter too much about the cloud provider. It sort of does if they, but they've all got their own mechanisms to deploy VMs, databases, whatever it is, clusters of Kubernetes and whatnot. So the idea is it's an abstract layer above. Okay, so the idea is that you can have infrastructure as code that's repeatable, it's reliable, it can be version controlled, and away you go. And of course, you can tap that into your CI/CD pipeline as well. Okay, now I'm not talking just about Azure infrastructure as code. I've got this page open more for me to keep on topic more than anything. But the main thing is that there's a lot of these things. One of the big ones is Terraform. There was a big thing where Terraform went, I think it was Terraform, went from open source to closed source and all of that sort of stuff. And no doubt there's forks and everything of that. But anyway, when I started to look at this, again, Dodgy Dave's website is not going to need this. But I like to actually have a look through at least of the processes and the principles at play. So it isn't just about Azure for this time around. Okay. In fact, if I go down here, you will see there's multiple ways of using infrastructure as code. IAC, another acronym that we have to remember. Goodness me. So, you've got ARM, which is the Azure Resource Manager, but again, Amazon Web Services have got their own, Google has got their own, everybody else has got their own, and so forth. And choice is good, isn't it? But there's Terraform, yeah. You've got Ansible, Chef, the Chef and Puppet, I've certainly heard about. But the one that I hadn't is Pulumi, or Pulumi, anyway, however you say that. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video, because most of the other infrastructure of code ends up being YAML. If you've not seen YAML, well done. Run away from it. No. I mean, it's obviously a format. I don't know. XML, people hated XML, JSON, then they started hating JSON, then they've got YAML, then they've got another format, and it's really just a text file. Just in YAML's word, it's based on the indentation that is quite key, whereas in XML you've got the opening closing brackets, or JSON you've got the squiggly mustachy bracket thing, or square brackets for array. Anyway, don't get me started on all of that. So the idea is, why is this interesting? Well, it works with a lot of different cloud providers, and the big thing, if I scroll down, is this. Okay, so you can author your infrastructure code just as you sort of would in a way with your application code. Okay, and you can see it's got TypeScript, it's got Python, it's got Go, it's got C#, which is my favorite. Java used to be. I haven't touched Java in years, but you do also have YAML. There you go, if you really want YAML. But the idea is, most editors these days, this is the indentation at play here. Anyway, we're not going to get into YAML, but in my case, being able to essentially write my infrastructure as code in my native language, as it were. It's not every language there, but come on, I mean, TypeScript is JavaScript. It's a superset of JavaScript, isn't it? So at least you've got type and, IntelliSense sort of setups. But the idea is you can define your stack to deploy. And again, it doesn't matter about which provider. You've got AWS, Google, Azure, of course, Microsoft. I think when I read down, there are a few other cloud providers as well. But the point being is that what any of this infrastructure of code is doing, and certainly Pulumi, is it will be, obviously in this case, this example is using AWS S3, the storage bucket. So it's obviously got IntelliSense around that. But obviously if you were to use their serverless Lambda functions and things like that, you can pull that in, but you can define it as code in your normal code state of mind, as it were. Or, like I say, you can go to YAML and do that as well. Either way, it version controls everything. And ultimately it means either if you're going to run this infrastructure as code as is, it will, and Pulumi's got a bit like Docker, where you do Docker up, Docker, Docker down, to create a container, pull a container down when you're not using it. Okay, it's got all sorts of magic that I'm not going to go into because I'm trying to keep this to 15 minutes. But the idea, like I say, the idea is that it's repeatable. You can upload, you can create your infrastructure in literally in seconds. Okay, and it's going to be the same setup every time. And there's the other bit. If you just want to run it up for a half an hour doing some testing, you can then do Pulumi down, I think it is, or something like that. It's one command line, and it will tear down that whole infrastructure, so you're not left thinking, oh, I created that VM manually. Oh, I created that SQL database manually. Have I deleted everything? Have I deleted all the network bits that go with that? Have I deleted all the other things that I might get charged for? And there we go. You know, everybody's looking after their money, obviously. So the idea is this is a great way of being able to. You could literally have a really huge infrastructure with Kubernetes and goodness knows what going on there for all your container orchestration and whatnot, but you can pull it down within seconds as well. Okay, and it will clear up everything on all of those different cloud providers. So it's that part isn't unique to Pulumi, but certainly what seems to be is this nice clean way of being able to write whatever language that you want. One thing I don't see here is Rust, but anyway, that's okay. I'm sure it'll be there eventually. But you do have a few options here, and again, YAML is the universal one that a lot of infrastructure type stuff uses anyway. Definitions, Docker uses YAML to define the the container up process and all that sort of stuff. So that's what I've got. It's the pricing. The good news is when you look at the pricing, yeah, you got free for Dodgy Dave, myself, which is very good, considering you've got 200 resources that you can call there. You can store 25. They do secret management as well, and again, it's essentially abstracting above the secrets that those other cloud providers would provide, if you follow that. Whether it's Azure or AWS or Google, you've got it in a common framework. Now, you may not want to do that, and that's fine, but there we go. But you can, like I say, they've even got self-hosting if you're more of an enterprise business setup. But free to get going, I think this is pretty good. And again, when you look at that sort of way that it's working there as code, I think that is a really nice environment. You can check that in source control, just as you do with your normal code. And that, I think there's a little example down here. But maybe not. I've gone past it, but never mind. It's okay. But essentially, they show the command line where it is literally Pulumi up and Pulumi down. So whatever that stack is defined, whether it's just Dodgy Dave's little website or a complete infrastructure for your super duper enterprise application, then you've got this control. So that's what I've got. So thank you if you've made it this far. Please subscribe and like. I think everybody's saying that. I might as well throw that in. I feel such a fake, but there you go. But yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. And for now, have a good one.